We are a team. As storytellers and dreamers,
there is always magic to discover.
Once upon a time,
a Las Vegas showgirl
and a comedian magician,
figured out that even with different perspectives,
our adventures and experiences together
are really just
one big
caper.
Hey there, welcome to One Big Caper. I'm Athena, this is my friend Phelyx, and we are talking about lots of fun things on this podcast.
Talk about
all the things.
all the things. These are discussions that we've been having for years. Not a single one has been completed. We also love the idea that this is content that is driven by you too. So reach us anytime.
Yeah, sure. So this wasn't necessarily a question, but I thought it'd be funny to talk about how people perceive Phelyx. The way he dresses, the way he bees. I don't know if we could do a whole episode about me, but Phelyx, for example, believes certain things about the perception that he has manipulated.
I can address that. Yeah.
Your juicy bit is
My juicy bit is what?
manipulating perception.
Well, yeah, I guess that's where we start, though.
Okay,
So,
we can start with the juicy bit.
We can kind of start with a juicy bit. I'll have a few juicy bits if this is going to be about the way people perceive me, because
Okay.
that is a running theme in my life.
Okay, so should we start with how other people, you have learned other people perceive you, or should we start with how I perceived you before we got close?
Maybe we can
He
end with
looks
that.
a little
A little
nervous about
yeah.
that one.
We'll end with that.
Okay.
I have had experience with how people perceive me, but I have to preface all of that with it is my perception that that is how they perceive me.
Yeah.
People have explained to me what they perceive about me. I have, because of what I do for a living, I have had the odd experience of seeing people dressed as me for Halloween.
What?
I have been a Halloween costume many times.
Are you serious?
Yes, and it has been fascinating to see what people's interpretation of me is. And
There's always a cigar.
I
I'm
wish
sure.
I had photographs. I
a
don't have
cigar or a
photographs.
pipe, I'm sure, right?
No,
Oh, okay.
no, but comic interpretations of me.
I had
I've
no
seen
idea.
it more than once. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And I
Huh.
suppose that's ultimate bit of flattery, but very strange.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an odd sensation.
I would
And
be,
it was not an organized thing. It very, very strange. Yeah.
I think I would be upset if someone did a Halloween costume of me.
I never, it would have never occurred to me that I would ever be somebody's Halloween costume, but I have been more than once.
Well, we are going to talk about costumes in a couple weeks.
Yeah, well, so that's a big part of what I do. I engineer people's perceptions of me, and that is a running theme in my life, and it comes from experimentation. And I think my first awareness of that experimentation, like the meta element of it, was when I performed as a mime.
Okay.
And that was an artistic experiment. I did it as a street performer, as a busker, but I dressed in full mime character. My name was Willie. My middle name is William, so that wasn't a huge reach, but I was Willie the Mime.
Are you serious?
Nobody really knew because you don't speak as a mime.
Okay.
So I had a business card that said Willie the Mime.
How old were you?
That was an experimentation that lasted from about 17 and 18.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So in where we live, there is a buzzing metropolis that has become famous for a number of good and bad reasons, called Boulder, Colorado. And there is a walking mall there that was kind of one of the only really outdoor walking malls of the 1980s, called Pearl Street, which is very famous as a pitch for busking, for street performing. And I performed as a mime up there a few times. And the experimentation made me very aware that the anonymity that I was afforded by being covered in makeup allowed me to be considerably more relaxed as a performer. Because people didn't know who I was.
And I can relate to that. Because when you're wearing a $10,000 Bob Mackie costume that no one would recognize you in on the street, the anonymity is important.
Yeah.
For sure.
So that was very interesting. I guess one of the first juicy bits is that I did a formal experiment with 8 students when I was in high school. It was a psychology class.
Oh,
and
I don't think I know this story.
Each of 4 different days in 1 week, we dressed in different costumes as I directed. So the first one was ourselves, just come as you are.
Okay.
Then I had everybody do their best to muster kind of a business person's costume, professional outfit.
Okay.
I think I explained to people that they had to imagine they were going to court or
Oh,
something.
okay,
so
that's
they
a
would
good,
like
yeah.
step it up a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't a big church-going crowd, so otherwise I would have said going to church clothes or something.
Right, okay.
But then I also instructed people to look like tourists one day. And then degenerate high school students was the last one. So we were supposed to look like little rock and rollers or punk rockers or whatever.
Degenerate high
And
school.
and people had different interpretations of each of those prompts, but mostly followed along. So the experiment was that we were to go to a building in downtown Denver, Colorado, called the World Trade Center, one of our tallest buildings, and the objective was to get onto the elevator, but to climb off of the elevator every 10 floors to see how high we could get based on our appearance. And the results were predictable, but I was able to build a literal bar graph of how high we were allowed to get in that building and before somebody asked us to leave. Or
What?
Yeah.
How many
Yeah.
kids were there?
9 of us total. Yeah. So that was a fun experiment, but this has been a theme for a very long time. I was once hired by a construction company.
You already said that juicy bit in another episode.
Okay, this is in another episode, but I was hired to just have a necktie on, but a vest and hard hat,
Yes.
and people worked harder when I was around, and safer.
Yeah.
There was an experience rather that Athena had, was a difficult experience, but I donned my Republican costume for that to be an intimidating person, which I think worked.
Okay, so define your Republican costume real quick.
The Republican costume, that's just the name for it, but it's a very conservative suit, not as, I don't know, theatrical. For me, it's theatrical. That's why I call it a Republican costume. But it's a very conservative suit with a red, white, and blue straight necktie.
I thought it was just a red necktie.
No, red, white, and blue.
Really?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
You're gonna have to show me this.
Sure.
I thought you had a flag pin on. And,
Oh, yes, I had an American flag pin.
And you said no part because it was more conservative hairstyle.
Correct. Yep.
Are you conservative today? Oh, just a little bit.
Not necessarily. I'm dressed down today.
Okay, right. He forgot the prompt when he got.
Well, I
dressed.
could have dressed as my Professor Phelyx
character.
character. I don't know. Yeah. It's not really a character. It really is me.
It's amplified.
Yeah.
Right. So, sorry, I interrupted the Republican costume, and you did that to kind of intimidate the people that were giving me a hard time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Because I think their perception of him was that he was my lawyer.
Yes, it is unlawful for you to say that you're an attorney
If
to
you're not.
misrepresent yourself, but I am fully aware that I can very lawfully let people draw their own conclusions.
And you talk about it in your show with the
I do.
lab coat.
I do. I have a lab coat that has, in one experiment, allowed me to run at full speed through an inner city hospital. And it's given me other privilege too. You know, my appearance, even as Professor Phelyx, and when I'm traveling, for example, when I fly, I wear my outfit. Part of it is practicality because I don't have to pack that much
Right.
more
It's
in,
pretty bulky.
in my luggage.
Yes.
A lot of it has to do with showbiz. In our previous episode, we talked about transferable skills. One of those skills was that I usually go to gigs in full costume. We often have dressing rooms, and other kinds of entertainers don't have the luxury that I do, but I discovered early that it was much easier for me to already be in what I was going to wear on stage. I also discovered that it was good for marketing.
Right.
So I stick out. And I started all that with talking about traveling. And I will tell you that my appearance has earned me upgrades, either upgrades on the flights or in hotels when I check in. I was once at the Rio given a top floor suite. And they're all suites at the Rio Hotel in Las Vegas.
Right.
But I was given a top floor because of my appearance.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So people's perceptions, especially when I'm in my bow tie, I'm always bespectacled, but I have seen people who are very careful to not use curse words in my presence.
I've seen this. I've seen this. It's really funny.
People sit up a little differently when I'm around and dress that way. It's fascinating.
I wonder why. Like, is it that they have had experience with people dressed like that and they had to behave a certain way? Or is it that that appearance makes them want to, like, step it up a little bit?
I've seen both, and I can recognize the difference.
Oh, how?
Yeah. I can just tell. I think it's from experience, and some people have actually verbalized how they're feeling and why they're reacting in such a way. A lot of particularly young male presenting people have expressed their desire to want to step up their game, or I wish I could pull that off.
Is it like, you think it's because of the fashion, or is it because you just look more put together and more professional to be taken more seriously as a person?
Yeah, all of it.
Okay.
All of it. I think they recognize that there's some kind of power or perceived authority to someone who is dressed in a certain way.
Well, I think that's why rent-a-cops or security guards
Have a uniform?
have a uniform.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense. Right?
Yes. And I think we could have the same discussion about you, in that your experience as a dancer has given you a different posture. It has given you a different grace about the way you move. And and people have a perception of you. I think a lot of people, in my experience with you, have found you intimidating.
Yeah.
Out here in the suburbs, people find you to be threatening, like you're going to steal their husbands or whatever.
Yep. This is a true story.
You've stirred people up at the school or at the grocer or... Yeah.
Yeah, I went with, so this is my podcast recording face. I went to the store this morning to grab a bottle of coconut water, and this was the face. And I wore, my basic summer romper, and I forgot I had full lashes on, and the looks that people, there's just a different energy about them, and last month when we did recording, I changed eyelashes and put on showgirl lashes, and then did some video filming and photo shoot. But not before I had to go to the grocery store, same grocery store, and get something with the girls. And there was a mom with her 2 kids, and it was almost like she was trying to shield them from looking at me. And I was like, she immediately stopped talking as soon as she saw me. And I was just like, I'm just like you. I'm a mother. These are my 2 children. I mean, maybe she was shielding them from the goth girl next to me. I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah.
But yeah, like, okay, so this isn't really an episode about me. I know you're trying to make it an episode.
No, I'm just saying that we can
include
just
me.
as
Right.
easily, have a discussion about.
I think that it's more important in your life. I don't give
I'm fascinated
a rip.
by it.
I
I always
have
have
been. Yes, and I haven't. Like, I don't really care. I just be myself. I just dress the way I dress, and if something doesn't match me, or like, would Athena wear this? I buy it or I don't. Like, I haven't spent as much time as you, or even like thought as how you would be perceived. And well, when I first met you, I was like, this guy is like totally straight-laced, goody-goody, not even interested in my shenanigans. And that's funny to me.
Now it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like, you're just Professor Phelyx, and you have this posture, and, I think that's part of our relationship that is the most fun for me, is to realize that you're not that, my love.
You know my secrets.
I mean, it's a character. Everyone is putting on masks all day long, every day.
Yeah.
And, it's unfortunate, but we live in a society where that's important.
I'm working on a project on this subject.
Yeah.
Currently, I'll be releasing some educational materials that have to do with my long-standing soapbox on the subject of authenticity.
So are you going to share about your middle school experiment?
Which one?
The jean jacket.
Oh, yes. Well, that's kind of where it all began, really.
Right. I thought that was going to be your juicy bit.
No, it never crossed my mind in all of today.
Okay.
It is another juicy bit, and I'd be happy to share it with you. I was certainly aware in 6th and 7th grade that there were cliques developing, and people, little, small friend groups, and people of common interests were attracted to one another.
Right.
And some groups were more exclusive than others. And I think it was probably inspired by a girl I like, but I'm not perfectly sure. Nevertheless, this one particular friend group.
It's always about a boy or a girl.
Generally, yeah, especially at that age.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
people seem to be wearing kind of a uniform. And the in thing at that time was that people just had to have a Levi's jean jacket. Of all the things, that particular group especially, they everybody wanted to have a Levi's jean jacket, which, interestingly, was kind of a status symbol at that school in that era, and by God, I had to have one.
Yeah.
So this is why I got my first job, and I was essentially cleaning a restaurant on weekends for my first paycheck, until I earned enough to get a jean jacket, and I think I quit.
Right.
But
Okay,
I
right.
bought a jean jacket, and sure enough, I wore that jean jacket, and I was accepted by that group, and it was kind of offensive. It was at that point that I realized the power of costume and the power of being able to manipulate perception. And I also realized some things that I didn't particularly care for about human psychology and that particular group of people. And it was at that point, and for many years after, I began to really experiment with costume and perception. And I would go to school in a full mime costume. I went to school with a pith helmet and binoculars around my neck.
So you did own a pith helmet at one point.
I did. Yeah,
Okay.
We're
See,
going back to that.
We're going
yeah.
back to that episode because I was like, I thought you said you had a pith helmet. Okay.
I was telling one of our teenagers just the other day that there was an occasion that I wore a suit and tie and carried a briefcase to school. And the briefcase was essentially my lunchbox, but it didn't just contain my lunch. It contained a tablecloth, a candle holder, plate, flatware, and
Oh
a
my
wine
love.
glass
Oh my love.
that I set up in the lunchroom to enjoy my lunch.
Are you serious?
I did that one time, yes. And all of these shenanigans, this ridiculous behavior, earned me carte blanche. I had a license to sit with any one of the different cliques because I guess, I don't know, I was admirably careless. Cavalier in my experimentation with sociology and psychology and costume and my demonstration that these cliques and their uniforms were absurd.
Right. So talking about one of the things that you despise about the human behavior, human psychology is the surface level of connection, right? I mean, that's the best way I could describe it. So you were literally putting on a costume or a mask and then they would accept you. And like, how messed up is that?
Yeah, that jean jacket taught me a lot.
It's just
a costume.
a coating. It's like one layer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unfortunate that that's how superficial, well, I mean, we're talking middle school anyway, but that's how some people continue that kind of behavior or, you're accepted into my clique, clan, or whatever because you match, you look like us.
You have the uniform.
You have the uniform.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that's some of the systems that are falling apart today are, they're literally pulling the rug out from that kind of like behavior or thinking that's acceptable, I guess. I wanted to bring up, I want to talk about that more, if we can.
You want to talk about the absurdity of uniforms?
I don't know why I'm losing my train of thought.
I think a lot of fashion is dictated by
Yes.
um,
Brand names.
mimicry.
Yeah, but yes, okay, so let's
Yeah.
talk about mimicry and then brand names.
Sure.
Okay, so mimicry first.
Mimicry. This I can talk for days on this subject.
Okay, well, we have like 5 minutes.
I'll try to synopsize.
They say mimicry is flattery.
Mm-hmm.
But
People with fashion, I think, are trying to deliver the perception of their own success, right? So
Okay.
they want to look successful.
or rich
and-
or powerful. Right?
Yeah, wealthy or powerful.
Yes.
Yeah. So therein lies one of the driving forces in fashion. The other is youth. The perception
Yes.
of youth and
Because
how,
youth is awarded in many ways
yeah,
in this world.
yeah, yes.
Okay. I think we just added like 5 new episodes.
We really did.
Sorry.
It's a complicated subject, but that's because there's so many facets to it. So, older folks mimic younger folks because of that
they
allure.
feel like they feel old and they're like, I'm going to be like the young people
Right.
and I'm going to wear the crop tops
And to
or whatever.
distinguish themselves, younger folks adopt new appearances or traits or behaviors or whatever in defiance of that to pull back away from the older folks who are mimicking them,
Yeah.
which I believe has resulted in tattoo culture, extreme body modification stuff, that kind of thing, because older folks wouldn't do this, right? I was at a pharmacy just yesterday, and there was somebody at the pharmacy who I recognized, and he was wearing a mask, but he sticks out. He's in a rock and roll band, and they're actually very famous. And I thought to myself initially, I should say hi, and I didn't do that because it looked like he was trying to keep to himself. But he has full sleeves of tattoos, and I also recognized that he looked very aged.
Oh.
Very aged.
Was
To
it
me,
Axl Rose again? Is he
No.
back? Oh, okay.
no. But he looks like he's about 65, 70.
But he's your age?
I think he might be just a little bit older than I am, but
Okay.
nevertheless, I'm realizing that these older folks covered in tattoos. What I noticed about his tattoos is that they are old enough now that they're all kind of blended
Blended,
together, so
yeah.
it just looks like dark blue sleeves.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
this is a younger person who is now older. Maybe he probably doesn't really regret his decision. He's had an incredible life, but now younger people, in defiance of the older folks, I think there will be a trend of no tattoos coming soon.
Good.
Which is interesting,
Fine,
right?
I'm all for that.
But it's
Goodness.
this mimicry and fashion and that kind of thing, and
Yeah.
what's interesting is we've gotten to the point that younger people can do something to show their youth in fashion that older people won't be able to mimic unless they have tattoo removal procedures or whatever. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Unless they're me with no tattoos.
You have never modified
Yeah.
your body.
There's very few of us even that were Bluebell girls or showgirls
Sure.
that didn't get tattoos later. So
That
think
might
it
be
is.
an interesting little rebel punk rock kind
yeah, I
of
think so too.
reaction
For
to
sure.
a career and where you weren't allowed to do any such thing.
Right. We can talk about that in another episode.
Sure.
We don't have
It's
to
about
talk
appearance.
about we don't have to talk about brands today either because that's actually a whole different psychology. But getting into the you have curated your look to manipulate a perception of you.
I did. Yeah. That's the entire reason that I dress the
But
way I do.
But I think that how you dress when you're not in Professor Phelyx is still very different. I don't think that unless you're always trying to be Professor Phelyx on a dial like
No,
Athena
no.
Escazala. No?
No,
I mean, like,
have
who
very
wears a jacket like this?
I have very specific tastes.
Yeah.
Yeah, curated collection.
Yeah.
A palette from which to dress myself, but everything's pretty specific. I don't know. I have some young friends who have asked for tips or whatever. And I don't know how to back engineer.
Well, I think it's intuition, both you and I.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know how to back engineer it. I don't know how people teach people, like stylists. I don't know how they do it, honestly. How do you teach someone to dress? I mean, we can do it in a costuming sense, I guess.
We start with color theory and then we move on to, I don't know. I mean, this has a specific hand to it that I like, but nobody knows that term.
Who knows what hand means in the audience? Raise your hand.
Right.
My love. Yeah. I mean, when Phelyx and I started to become close, he told me that he thinks that people think when he gets off from work that he has a study, a library with like shelves and shelves and shelves, like ceiling to floor of books. And what did you say? A corgi for an ottoman?
I rest my feet on a cocker spaniel and smoke my pipe while wearing a velvet robe or something. Yeah, people have this perception of me that I've created. I've crafted it, but it's likely different from reality. I did a lot of filming in an office that Athena and I share, and my backdrop for that filming is also very curated to perpetuate that perception of me or Professor Phelyx and how I might live. It's Hollywood. It's made of wood, Hollywood.
It's Hollywood.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a man cave. It's your little playroom.
Okay.
He disagrees.
No,
That's what he says when he disagrees with me.
he says okay.
Okay. That's all he says.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else should I say about the way I look? I look funny. It's on purpose, and everything is on purpose. Even the hair.
Michael Franti. This is a perfect example.
Yeah.
This is another juicy bit.
This is another juicy bit, and I'm ashamed.
Why?
Because I made a judgment that was unfair and
But
inaccurate.
you do this. You do this
And it
for
was
a living.
because of his appearance.
What?
My judgment was...
No, I know, but you do it for a living. You manipulate people's perception. That's exactly what he was doing.
Yes, I suppose you're right. So I was on duty right before a show at a venue where Athena and I met and decided that I could use a little artificial consciousness. So I headed out for some coffee. There is a chain coffee shop kind of across and down the street from the venue. I went outside and I was in a tuxedo that day. That was the costume of the day was a tuxedo. And
A 100-year-old tuxedo.
Yeah, a very old tuxedo. This is a place in the city where a lot of panhandlers kind of group. And so I'm very used to being a target for folks who are seeking spare change or whatever, because I'm dressed a certain way, right? So I was kind of in a rush to go get my coffee and then get backstage again. And somebody approached me who said, "I'm sorry to bother you, but," and I thought the next question was, "Do you have any money to spare? Can you give me $1? Can you give me," the new tactic is specific, like 38 cents or whatever. Yeah.
Oh.
It's because it sounds like you need it for a specific purpose.
Right.
And so psychologically people will say, "Oh,
Right.
here's 50 cents. Anyway, I said, "Oh, I have nothing on me." And he said, no, I'm from Los Angeles, and even there we don't see people rocking a 1920s tuxedo like you are. And I said, "Oh, well, thank you." And he said, "Can we have a picture together?" And I said, "Absolutely." And so I stopped and was looking. He had a companion who was very well dressed, shooting with their phone, right? So while we were waiting and posing for a photograph, I said, "Are you just here visiting?" And he said, "Yes, I'm doing a show." And I said, "What kind of a show?" I said, "Where?" or something like that. And he said, "Red Rocks." And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, who is this? And this person was Michael Franti of Spearhead.
But he didn't have shoes on, you said.
No, he was dressed very down, and Michael's appearance is kind of scraggly anyway, on purpose.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
he has a certain sprezzatura about him. But I didn't realize that this was...
Well, he
a
was
famous
probably trying to dress down so that
So
he
maybe
wouldn't be
so he wouldn't
recognized.
be recognized. Yeah.
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 Like the person you saw at the pharmacy yesterday.
I had to go when I finally got backstage. I had to look up who was performing in town because I still didn't know who he was.
Yeah, I don't think you should be ashamed about that.
No, I felt bad because I assumed that he was going to panhandle and ask for money.
Right, but how often do people talk to each other on the street? So
In that part of
Right.
town, it's, that's the interaction from strangers is
Right.
give me money.
give me money.
Yeah.
I need money. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't think you should feel ashamed.
Okay,
Yeah, there goes that.
there goes
I don't
that.
know. I thought that was a fun way to end this. Hopefully, Michael Franti watches this someday. Hey.
Yeah, so we'll wrap it up, but if you have any questions about the way I look, I am happy to answer. And we can have this discussion again if you like. Reach us any old time at hello@onebigcaper.com.
Yeah. Thanks for watching this week.
Thank you.
We can't keep doing this without you. Give us just a little bit of your time by subscribing, sharing, rating, or talking about One Big Caper with someone else. We truly appreciate your support.
We want to hear your stories. Visit onebigcaper.com to get to know us even more.
This episode of One Big Caper was published in 2022. All rights to broadcast in whole or in part are the property of Gazellas Productions, LLC.